The deuce is loose. The Cleveland Browns hire Duce Staley to coach their running backs. We're going to talk all now. Your latest Locked On Browns is live.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB, on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd, and I appreciate each and every one of you that make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. Everyday crowd keeps getting bigger and bigger. Don't miss out. Get in on the action. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LOCKEDONNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Cleveland Browns a couple days ago solidified the tight end coach opening by bringing in Tommy Rees. Today, longtime NFL running back, longtime NFL running back coach, Duce Staley is your new running back coach for the Cleveland Browns. Duce Staley was an accomplished player in the NFL, Philadelphia Eagles and Pittsburgh Steelers, won a Super Bowl ring with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's not hold that against him, everybody. Over 8,000 total yards from scrimmage, 34 touchdowns in his time in the NFL. Started his coaching life in the NFL in 2011, spent 2011 and 2012 as a special teams quality assistant coach with the Philadelphia Eagles. 2013, he became the Eagles running back coach. He was also then elevated to assistant head coach 2 seasons with the Detroit Lions, where he was the running back coach and an assistant head coach. And this past year in Carolina, running backs coach and assistant head coach after a 1-10 start. A lot of house cleaning down in Carolina. Duce Staley back on the market. Had interest from the New York Jets. Duce Staley ultimately chose the Cleveland Browns. Don't know if it was a money thing. Not exactly sure. If you look, obviously Breece Hall is there with the New York Jets, an attractive option. But the Browns were able to get this one done. Duce Staley does have a long-time relationship with defense coordinator Jim Johnson. The two of them were on the same staff that won the Super Bowl for the Philadelphia Eagles. Browns were able to get this one done. And, certainly an impressive get. If you're asking me, would I describe this as an upgrade from Stump Mitchell? Yes, I would describe this as an upgrade. Younger guy. There was a time, where Duce Staley will be 49 come the end of February. Duce Staley, there was a time where a lot of people thought Duce Staley was going to end up being an NFL head coach. Still an opportunity, certainly a young enough man to have that opportunity. But the Browns are able to get somebody in here of quality. And, that was, we'll see the way it works for Tommy Rees, obviously going from, offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, Alabama, certainly to become tight ends coach for the Browns. Switch, obviously, for Tommy Rees, and certainly trying to, broaden his coaching resume is Tommy Rees. We'll see, and believe that Tommy Rees hire will turn out to certainly be an upgrade. I am confident to say that Duce Staley is an upgrade. It was nothing against Stump Mitchell. It wasn't. And, there were times for Stump that, he got a lot of credit, but look, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt were really good running backs. And to, sometimes put that all on the coach isn't necessarily fair or accurate. If you're coaching talented players, you expect that they are going to perform at a talented level and give you solid production. So definitely love the hire. Obviously, Andrew Berry obviously had somewhat of a relationship with Duce Staley. Everybody remembers there was that about that calendar year where Andrew Berry was with the Philadelphia Eagles. His paths certainly did cross with Duce Staley. They were both there during the same period. before Andrew came back to Cleveland as this team's general manager. So certainly, an influence there, a relationship there. I'm sure the interview process was more about, hey, this is why I think, Duce, you can fit this team. This is why I think you will be the guy that, can get this running game, which ranked 12th last year. And, keeping in mind that the running game ranked 12th last year and you lost Nick Chubb in the second game of the year, you think that's impressive. You do, but this is a team that consistently finished top 10, top 5, and was a step back year. Some of that certainly can be attributed to the Nick Chubb injury. Some of that can certainly be contributed to all the upheaval on the offensive line due to all the injuries there. But the Browns are, trying to, much like they did last year for the defensive side of the ball, are trying to improve this team. And, you're trying to always improve your roster, and you're trying to improve your coaching and your positional coaching. As far as I know, there's a lot of people with Stump Mitchell and, obviously, doing a lot of exit interviews, did a great piece with Cameron Justice, joined, McNeil and those guys, obviously over there as well. And, sometimes, the truth maybe hurts. I know a lot of people were up in arms about, what was maybe said about Kareem Hunt. Look, there were issues why Kareem Hunt wasn't really, offered or brought back after the 2022 seasons. Kareem is a good player. His athleticism and his, physical skills may be diminishing a tad. But, there were times that, Kareem wasn't essentially towing the line in every aspect of it. And some of that, is certainly you got to put on Kareem. You are a professional. You have an obligation. You are held to do things a certain way. It's difficult, when, things have to be said in a negative light towards somebody that is, loved and respected, but, sometimes harsh words are said, and sometimes things don't have to be sugar coated. Stump seems to be, in a good place. So obviously, understanding that, his time with the Browns is over, and we'll see what the next chapter is for Stump Mitchell. But obviously a great part of this organization and his time here, and, very, very, good what he did, given the fact that he was given a lot to work with. For Duce Staley, it's going to be a little bit of a different room. It does not have that known quantity in Nick Chubb that Stump Mitchell always had. We'll see what version we get of Nick Chubb. And we're going to talk a little bit about the running back room, where it's at, and what exactly Stump Mitchell is going to be looking at, and what exactly Stump Mitchell is going to be working with here in the 2024 season. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns continues. Everybody, stick around. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. We are the easiest, most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on a 2 to 6 player stat projection lineup. You can watch the winnings roll in. Do you want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LOCKEDONNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns. Again, for everybody who comes out here, makes Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. You guys are the absolute greatest, and I appreciate you. The everyday crowd, let's get that number to 7,500. If you're not subscribed to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel by now, we'll make a new plan stand and make sure you hit that subscribe button. Show's always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Now, you look at the way the room is currently constructed. And obviously a lot of this, and these are questions that we don't have any answers to, and we won't until probably September, even later. We have no idea when Nick Chubb will be ready to play or take an NFL snap again. There's just no way of knowing. Obviously, Nick is a relentless worker. Nick will do everything it takes to smash the rehab process to get himself back to his team. There are obviously some contractual loopholes, hurdles that are going to have to be figured out between Nick's camp and the Browns. The Browns are not going to pick up the money that Nick Chubb would be owed. Either way, if Nick had finished the year, put up another good year, the Browns most likely were going to tear that deal up and find some way to appease Nick Chubb with a 2-year contract. Unfortunately, that Monday night game in week 2 in Pittsburgh brought up the second scenario where Nick Chubb's contract is going to be, voided, no guaranteed money, and put into something else. And for Nick Chubb, it sucks. But Nick Chubb obviously did get paid pretty well over the last couple of seasons, and that's good for Nick Chubb. He deserves every dime he gets, and then some. He's a model citizen. He absolutely loves his team. He loves his franchise. He loves his city. He is a quiet, no nonsense, no trouble member of your roster. You heard Andrew Berry speak so eloquently about, Nick having to come out of his shell a little bit, because Nick's thing were always his actions on the field. And that was what kind of, showed his teammates his commitment to them, and showed a lot of guys that this is the way and this is the expectation the Cleveland Browns have for players who are on their roster. And it was real easy to say, hey, you want to be successful here? You want to have a long storied career here? You want to make some good money while you're here? Watch number 24. Watch how he handles his business during practice, during games, week to week, month to month, year to year. So, it will be difficult, obviously, when these conversations come. And the contract that Nick Chubb gets, probably a lot of people will, back up a little bit and be a little stunned. But this was a pretty severe knee injury that Nick Chubb suffered. And again, it sucks. Obviously, you don't like to see any player get injured. But one guy who already fought back from a tremendous injury in college and was such a stable and solid performing professional for your team, to have to go through something again, sucks. But there will be some way it works out, and people will be stunned when it is a low guaranteed money. And hopefully with a high incentive-laden, achievable incentive-ladens for Nick Chubb to recoup the money that he would have probably made this year if, unfortunately, the knee didn't happen week 2 in Pittsburgh. Just another reason I hate the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm kidding. So, this is what brings up a real big question mark for this team. This team has to figure out what they're going to do, because it is going to be extremely difficult. And the Browns don't know if they need a future running back. Maybe bringing one in and looking at a guy who could potentially be a number 1 is something, they could do. Looking at the draft, not sure when the Browns are picking in the mid to low 50s, there's going to be a slam dunk running back that you can just come in and basically say, all right, well, there's the heir apparent. And the other fact of the matter is the heir apparent might have to be the leading man. We don't know what we're going to get from Nick. So to draft another rookie might be a tough spot to be. And again, there's not going to be much there in, where they make their first pick. And they certainly have other positional needs as well. Jerome Ford, and look, I think Jerome Ford did an extremely good job. Well over 1,100 yards, showed a lot in the receiving game. I know there's people, there were lapses. There were, of course. But, some of the things Jerome was able to do in the receiving game, that obviously huge touchdown reception against the New York Jets. Be a play that I think everybody kind of always wants to watch when teams, when they sit back and they talk about the Browns 2023 season. Obviously, the magnitude of the game, the ability to clinch and punch their playoff ticket that night, the wild zigzag run down the sidelines. Nobody's going to forget that. 4 yards per carry, which, in the NFL isn't terrible. It's not really the greatest number in the world for the Cleveland Browns, seeing as Nick Chubb was popping off 5 yards a clip the day he walked in the building and was at that number. That, again, that unfortunate night in Pittsburgh when he went down. There were 16% of Jerome Ford's runs that ended in 0 yards or negative yards. And my everydayers know we've talked about this a lot. I think Jerome Ford was in a tough spot of whether he was supposed to take whatever he could get or try to trust his blocking. And as, the year went on and the offensive line continued to shuffle and Joel was out there banged up and Postic a little bit banged up and you were on your 4th and your 5th left tackles and Wyatt Teller was always out there, with a cranky calf at times. It was tough to get the full Jerome Ford experience, but 1,100 total yards, 9 touchdowns. I think Jerome did an extremely admirable job. I think he is absolutely somebody the Browns want to work with. I think he is somebody that the Browns absolutely, when they're starting to put together this offense, once they finish their coaching staff, part of the emphasis is going to be how can we emphasize and hopefully get even better production out of Jerome Ford. 4 yards per carry is nice. 4.5 would be a hell of a lot nicer. Getting closer to 5 would be geeky, ecstatic for the Browns if they could get Jerome Ford to that number. Kareem Hunt, look, what you did was admirable. And, but 3 yards per carry is 3 yards per carry. He had a lot of tough runs for this team. But unfortunately, Kareem, who never came into the league as a superb athletic guy, got everything he could out of him this year. It wasn't supposed to be another Kareem Hunt season for the Browns here in 2023, which makes me believe that there is, not going to be a Kareem Hunt season for the Cleveland Browns in 2024. Pierre Strong, the moments, the explosiveness, there were times where you really thought you had something with Pierre Strong, and I'm not done with it yet. The kick return ability, the gunner ability, Pierre should be a guy in camp, but the Cleveland Browns should be somebody that's really in the market looking for some type of running back to bring on a 1-year deal who can help this team. Because if Nick Winnebert does come back, if he is Nick Chubb, that's fantastic. But the Browns can't count on it until they see it, and they're already going to be into the regular season before they know what Nick Chubb is going to be. And we'll talk about getting this running game back to where it needs to be, and we'll talk about the fact they need to probably bring in somebody who could be considered a heavy hitter at the position. Your latest Locked On Browns rolls on. Nobody leave. We ain't done yet. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Closing out your latest Locked On Browns for now, and we talk about the success of the Cleveland Browns running game and trying to get it back to this top 5 running game that we have become, expecting, and to be a top 5 in anything and expect that to be your benchmark. Maybe not that realistic. But facts are facts. This Cleveland Browns team, through the first 3 years this year, you can put an asterisk next to it. I think that's fair. But this team has always been a team that's expected to run the ball well and perform well with the running game. And with Duce Staley, and as for right now, Bill Callahan is still this team's offensive line coach. Don't know if that's going to change. It seems to be very quiet in that regard. It seems to be that, the Browns would be content and understand if Bill left. Would love to have him back. If it came down to giving him a few more shekels, I think the Browns would be okay with that. But it is a tough situation. It's a man and his son. It's family. And if that's going to be the case, I don't think the Browns are going to, stand in their way. But, if you can get Bill Callahan back, you have now improved the running back coaching with Duce Staley. Certainly should be the expectation that this Cleveland Browns running game gets back to what we've expected and gets back to what it's always been with the Andrew Berry regime. And you've got to look at it and you've got to believe that, with the questions around Nick Chubb and not really ready to just rely on Jerome Ford, that there are names out there. Look, Derrick Henry's probably not a possibility. Josh Jacobs, another one. Tony Pollard, I keep telling you, that's a name I'm certainly going to keep my eyes on, because that is another player like Jerome Ford where, you're going to get an interesting, diverse back. We've always talked about Nick. He can contribute in the receiving game. It is not a better part of his game. But if you can get him, Tony Pollard, Jerome Ford, it certainly can get you into a spot, where you can use your running backs a lot more in the receiving game. Certainly something to consider. Austin Eckler, wouldn't say no, too old. Gus Edwards, he was a Raven. No. Ezekiel Elliott will be out there. DeAndre Swift for me. And of course, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. These are interesting names for me. Both of these guys, I think in, what has normally been a wide zone scheme. But Edwards-Helaire obviously, has played a lot of the running back position from the, with his quarterback in shotgun. So that is something you would certainly believe that would, pair well with this team. DeAndre Swift, obviously the Eagles a lot as well this past year, and DeAndre showed that he can carry a large load. Was a good player in my opinion when he was with the Detroit Lions. I think he really blossomed this year with the Philadelphia Eagles. Running back market, Devin Singletary is available. You got to think Houston would be foolish to let Devin Singletary walk. But these are guys that you would consider getting in here, because this running game, and I don't think it truly cost this team this year. There were times where it certainly didn't help. And it always seems, they would get it going and then it would shut down for 2 weeks. They would get it going and then it would shut it down for 2 weeks. We didn't think they were going to run the ball with the success they did against the New York Jets. Bengal game week 18, who cares? Didn't really matter. Obviously, as far as personnel was on the field, could get nothing out of it against the Houston Texans. And, in order to, have, this diverse athletic quarterback in Deshaun Watson, you have to have defenses fearful and mindful of everything that you can do on the offensive side of the ball. And, this team going to need to run the ball better. They do not know what they have in Nick Chubb or what version of Nick Chubb they will get. And it's, so you have to basically hedge your bet there. So, again, I don't know if the draft is going to have an answer for them. The running back market for this draft, it's not there, man. It's just not it. Every now and then, with any particular positional group in a draft, you'll get a year every now and then where it's just, a little bit of a bummer. It's just not the class, and it doesn't, obviously doesn't always work that it's going to fall in line with the draft having the needs for what you need. So it's going to be tough, and the Browns are going to pick in the 50s, and they certainly have other positions they're going to have to worry about: wide receiver, defensive end, offensive line. All of these things are certainly things that they're going to have to look at with this. But you bring in Duce Staley, and Duce Staley, obviously Bill Callahan. Duce already has relationships in the building with Andrew Berry, with Jim Schwartz, rather. And it's going to be a lot of the focus to have Duce Staley get whatever running backs he's given to improve and perform and certainly be a better running team than the team that finished 12th in the 2023 season. And I kind of think Jerome Ford and Duce Staley, it's kind of like, shaking hands, meeting each other, and Duce Staley saying, "Hey, Jerome, nice to meet you." And young man, we're going to spend a lot of time together. And they're going to try to tap. There is a lot of potential in Jerome Ford's body. And look, again, I don't think this year was totally on Jerome Ford as far as that 16% of, 0 or negative carries. That wasn't necessarily on Jerome Ford. Offensive line certainly had his issues. And I think, and I will still believe, and I will say this forever, I think there were some people in Jerome Ford's ear saying one thing. I think there were some other people in Jerome's other ear saying another thing. And Jerome wasn't necessarily sure who to follow, who to listen to, and sometimes led to some indecisiveness that, obviously, hurt this team overall as far as their run game success in the 2023 season. Duce Staley is in. Still need a quarterback coach. Still need an offensive coordinator. We'll see the way the other positional groups on the offensive side work out. See what's going to be done, whether about a Bloom on the defensive line side of the ball for the Browns. Browns are heavy. Browns are active. Interviewing a lot of people. Still some big hires to come, obviously, and you can catch all of that here on Locked On Browns. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. Make sure that you are subscribing to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Click that button. Let's raise that number. I appreciate all that come out every day and make Locked On Browns your first listen. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.